Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by Shona Elliott, who's an author, an ex-CEO, a coach, and helps executives. She does a lot. So welcome to the show, Shona.
Thanks so much for having me, Steven. I'm really grateful to be here.
No, you are most than welcome to be here, and I'm really looking forward to deep diving into this conversation. But before we go ahead with that, can you just tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself, what you do, because let's face it, you're going to explain it far better than me.
Sure. Happy to. As you mentioned, I'm a former CEO. I've got 15 years of healthcare, primarily senior leadership experience, and recently turned bestselling author. I've got a book that was released on Amazon called Create Value as a Senior Leader, and it'll be in bookstores in April of next year. And my book, as life would have it, was released March 12th, and basically March 13th, COVID hit. And what started out as a journey to do something part-time while my daughter was in preschool obviously looks a little bit different as I homeschooled her, and she's home now for the summer. So I've been actually quite fortunate over the last few months. I've been kind of pulled in to help support senior leaders emerging from crisis or even through crisis with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 15 years of pandemic planning experience in the Canadian healthcare system. And I have 15 years of crisis management experience coupled along with operations and HR and leadership.
You're well equipped.
I am. So although I'm not officially open for business per se, because of my daughter at home and she's my main priority, I have been answering the call to serve and the call to help. And I'm happy to do so. It's such an important time.
Mm-hmm.
And leaders need all the help and support that they can get. And so I'm doing that. And in August, hopefully my daughter will be back in school and I will be providing support more full time and happy to do so.
Love it. One of the things that really makes me curious is it a great time to launch a book to help senior leaders a day before sort of it all kicks off? Because people at home, they're reading more, they've got the time to do a bit of personal development. Do you think that helped?
No, I don't. Any senior leader I talk to isn't at home and not working on personal development. They're just trying to survive. I think certainly emerging leaders, anyone thinking about leadership and are debating to go into it, certainly I think my book would be helpful to just give them really my view as to what's worked from a leadership perspective. Mm-hmm. And senior leaders I have spoken to, especially when I launched, they had no idea what was happening or what was going to roll out. And, a lot of folks thought, oh, this is going to be a 30-day thing or not a big deal.
Yeah. No, thing is with that, no one knew what was going to happen.
No, and no one knows now. Like, what's fascinating is that I've got an ebook that's just about finished. They'll offer as a free offering, and it's about what senior leaders need to consider as they emerge from crisis. Mm-hmm. And I started that about 3 weeks ago, thinking we were coming out of it here in Oklahoma. Things were looking really good. And then as life has it, we've been averaging 500 to 600 cases a day here, and we're not sure what's going to happen. Yeah. So emerging from crisis, we're kind of still in it here. Hospitals are starting to approach maximum capacity again. And so it's just rolling. And we've had obviously some challenges here with respect to race and inclusivity and diversity. And that has been layered on top of all of the COVID challenges. So right now, leaders are just getting pummeled. The resilience muscle is weakened, and saying that they're living in uncertain times is an understatement. So what I thought in May in terms of providing support looks so much different than what I'm thinking about today and the calls I'm getting. And that certainly will look different as the fall emerges. So that's kind of the thing about leadership. You kind of roll with the punches, and you have to kind of stay present in the moment and be resilient, which is easier said than done given our current times. And yet there is no other choice but to keep moving forward and, keep serving your employees and serving the mission of your organization.
Exactly. When you start working with senior leaders, what is it that makes them pick up the phone to you? What is it that makes them reach out to you? What's the catalyst for them that they know that they think, I need to call Shona?
Help is one thing. And I think in the past, a number of organizations may have called the bigger consulting firms, who can provide really helpful advice for specific problems related to revenue generation, organizational design, even employee engagement. We're in such a unique period of time that those the luxury of those offerings in terms of time and money is, I think, a bit in the past, at least for the folks I'm talking to. And they know that that hasn't perhaps been as effective for them as what they are looking for. So they're really looking for support on mindset, support on approach, and really the understanding that it is possible to navigate through the troubles that they're navigating through. In my career, there hasn't been too much I haven't seen in terms of difficult, challenging, toxic type cultures and difficult operational challenges. And there is always a way, and always a way through connection with employees. And I think those that do call me right now, given I'm not really fully launched, know that about me and know the success I've had through those connections and aligning with employees, and want to understand that better. And really, they want to brainstorm with someone who's going to help push back on the competing priorities that all senior leaders have. So I think that's one of the benefits that folks get when they work with coaches, consultants that have had the operational experience, is that they know what it's like to serve at the pleasure of a board. If you're reporting to a board of directors, and they know the challenges with respect to decreased market share and revenue, and the challenges with respect to employee disengagement or retention issues. And if you've been in those shoes, then you're able to work with that senior leader and help them reprioritize what's important at the moment, and not rely on kind of the boilerplate templates of the past. And that's what they get. There is no silver bullet approach today. There is no path that's been proven forward, because we're in such unprecedented times. And so they really do need someone that's a trusted partner that they can brainstorm with and work with, who's not going to judge them, not going to shame them of missteps, perhaps of the past, and just kind of keep the eye on the ball to move forward and achieve whatever they need to be achieving in the future.
Amazing. I'm guessing also there's a big part of that is because so much of it is unknown, and within large organizations, that unknown there's a huge danger to it, in the sense of the feeling of panic and the sense of desperation in terms of staff, that for you to be able to then come in and help these senior leaders and almost be that person to just say, put a hand on their shoulders and be like, look, I'm here. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. That must be such a relief for them, for when you pick up the phone and you go, yeah, sure, I can help you.
For those that know me, for sure it is. And I think that the challenge folks have right now is, if they don't know me and they know they need help, is searching for that trusted partner. So there are a lot of folks providing coaching, whether that's life coaching, transformational coaching, business, or executive coaching. It's a huge market, and finding someone that you can trust, if they don't know me personally, or they don't have a trusted partner or trusted advisor, it is a challenge. And I think a lot of senior leaders don't even know where to start to look, and so don't look, and then they stay kind of stagnant, and they stay paralyzed, and they're not able to take that first step forward, and that's unfortunate. There's not really a good rigorous process to vet your trusted partners or trusted advisors. So I'm fortunate that there's enough folks right now that know me, and I have just a limited scope in terms of my support that's worked. And I've talked to a number now of executive consultants or coaches, and it's interesting. Everyone's got their own relationships and network. And in saying that, they too are struggling with how they can serve best, and how do they find those that are in need if they're so busy just putting out fires. So it's just really, unfortunately, tough set of circumstances of finding the right consultant or coach to help you with your specific need, and one that you feel that you can trust and will get you the results that need to occur in your organization to be successful.
Yeah, totally. Let's go back in time then, because you were that CEO, you were that senior leader in a large was it a large organization or sort of large organization?
Yeah.
What made you go, you know what, actually I want to do this side of your life and help be there for your daughter and helping her go to school and things like that? What was it that made you go, the CEO life is not done for me, but I'm changing the way I approach it?
Yeah, I decided during my maternity leave with Savannah, my daughter, that I would work a day a week with the board. So instead of just taking a year off, which is what you
Mhm.
get in Canada, we made an arrangement to give a day a week, and I felt very comfortable with that. The fear of not working at all with the organization I was the inaugural CEO of just was frightening, and so I gave it my best try. I think my first month home with Savannah, I was working 24 to 30 hours a week. So it was not a day a week.
That's a
And
day in a week in CEO terms.
yeah, exactly. And so, you're new mom and you're not sleeping. And I remember thinking after one board meeting that was late at night that it was probably about the fourth or fifth month that this is probably not going to be sustainable
Mm.
for me to do my best work and to be the best mom and best spouse and best person I could be. So around 7 months in, I made a decision to submit my resignation. And I had done 15 years. I felt really comfortable
Yeah.
in terms of the groundwork I laid at the organization in the almost 4 years I was a CEO, to let that go. And I was mom, and I really didn't think much else of it. I didn't think I would be really back in this space. And then she started preschool and had the opportunity to write a book. And it was not going to be about leadership, but as the vetting process went, it turned out I had no choice but to write about leadership. It's in my heart and
So
soul.
let's talk about the book then. So
Yeah.
great value as a senior leader. Obviously, you are quite clearly an expert in this. Was the book for you almost like therapy, like therapeutic in terms of actually getting, because this is what I hear a lot from authors, especially in this sort of style book, is that you get to say things that often is harder to say just in a briefing conversation or online. What was it about a book for you that made you go, yep, this is what I need to be doing?
Yeah, I think the message of my book is really a simple message around the need for senior leaders to be comfortable with being uncomfortable on the front lines with the employees and building those relationships. And that's how you achieve your organizational success. And although that message is simple, I know the application is not easy. And even
Mhm.
though I know and have believed that my whole career, I struggled many ways. And I share that in my book in terms of me thinking that as an enlightened leader, I have all the answers, and I did not. So I share those journeys. So in writing the book, it wasn't as much catharsis as it was really finding my message and being able to synthesize all of the leadership lessons of those 15 years, backing it up with evidence. So as a senior leader, you're not able to do the research,
Mhm.
you attend a conference here and there, but you don't really understand what the good things you're doing, how it is actually backed up by evidence. And that
Yeah.
was one of the blessings of writing the book, is that I was able to do that research. And I'm like, yes, of course, this is why, my approach was successful. And here's the evidence, with 14 different studies that
Fantastic.
support it. So for me, it was really a validation of what worked and honing my leadership voice in a more synthesized way. And as a senior leader, especially in Canadian healthcare, you don't get any opportunity to really have that
Yeah.
reflection. And I say that, and I had 3 years where, for fun, I did a part-time PhD program on organizational development and
As you do.
leadership. And
Yeah.
so I stopped at the thesis component, my dissertation, because I became a CEO. So I put it on pause. But even with that journey, the synthesis of the information that I was learning then just didn't cut it for me in terms of
Mhm.
application to leadership. And to me, it's all about taking research and applying it to the hands-on leadership journey that you're in. And I was able to do that with my book. So maybe a little cathartic, but just more validation for me as to,
Which is
what.
probably better than being cathartic.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true. Yes. I'm like, gosh, that worked. That didn't
I
work.
was right all that time.
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. Pat on the back.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, I'm curious to know, with the COVID situation and, like we said earlier, the unknown of what's going to happen. If we take leadership into this, how do you think that this is going to change leadership? How do you think this is going to change? In fact, here's a better question. How do you think this is going to change the next generation of leadership? The ones that are perhaps at that lower tier position in the companies, or that lower tier position, or thinking about starting their own business, that kind of side, and they're seeing all of this go on. How do you think that's going to change moving forward?
Gosh, I see people running away from leadership. They aren't, they see what the leaders are going through now in
Mhm.
terms of the unprecedented challenges. And and the risk of your reputation. So you could be trying your best and have good intentions, and you make a statement, and your reputation can be really damaged from a social media perspective. And so I see a lot of budding leaders and emerging leaders really shy away. Why go through that effort to build a career where,
how do we save that then? How do we turn that back and get budding leaders excited and want to it almost sounds like a ridiculous question, but want to dive into the potential stress of a senior leader position?
Yeah, I think it's incumbent on the senior leaders themselves to personally foster those emerging leaders. I think that's one of our key leadership attributes. And it's hard in the time of crisis to even think about doing that. And now more than ever, senior leaders have to be thinking about that, because if they don't, what will they have left?
Yeah.
They're not going to have a good succession plan, and they're not going to have.
Would you say that senior leaders are giving that enough mental space though? Obviously right now they're probably, like we said earlier, doing a lot of firefighting, a lot of helping and change, even though I guess it is so important for them to create that mental capacity right now to save senior leadership. And I know that's an extreme way to put it, but it is about that next generation that are going to come through.
Oh, absolutely. And each organization is different. So I think in organizations where there's already a very healthy leadership culture, and where they are really grooming those leaders that are informal and helping them rise, I think they'll be sensitive and cognizant of that. And in any crisis, informal leaders pop up. You see them all the time, just wanting to serve and contribute. And you see some people really, rise to the top. And in healthy organizations, those senior leaders are going to recognize that, support them, and basically handhold them in terms of, their leadership journey going forward. Yeah. So I think that's really important in organizations where they don't have that kind of philosophy. I think that's the challenge, where they're going to not see those emerging leaders appear. And I think their crisis becomes even more challenging.
100%. It's been said on the podcast before, but we could almost take this situation as almost like a filtering system, where, like you said, those people that haven't had that chance to stand up have probably stood up. They've probably seen the opportunity. They've probably gone, you know what, I'm gonna help. I'm gonna stand up to the plate. I'm gonna be that person that my leader perhaps isn't being, because that's often the case. And those that haven't been able to stand up or have fallen short are gonna be able to, leave companies, and that filtration system is going to come into place. So with that said, could it also be an opportunity for, after this, actually companies have streamlined their leaders and their employees in a way which means that the people that are still in the business, or still want to, probably a better question, still want to be in the business, are those that are going to be in the senior leadership positions for the next 10, 15, 20 years, versus the ones that perhaps didn't make the cut?
Hopefully. Unfortunately, here in the US, there's so many organizations, specifically healthcare right now, where there are just massive layoffs, furloughs, terminations. Yeah. So the organizations I've spoken with, some have a strategic approach and some don't. And
I suppose it's also a balancing act, isn't it, versus what the organizations are capable of doing financially, versus the ones that, there's countless organizations that effectively just sat on a pile of cash and can do whatever they want.
Well, and I think the organizations that their culture is in the place where, even though they're experiencing challenges, they can still look around and engage their leadership team and employees to say, hey, this is where we're at. Revenue's dried up in these areas. Let's create the plan together, as difficult as that may be. And in those cases, I think you're going to see senior leaders make the right choices as to what talent to keep on and what talent to part ways with. But that takes an organization to have been pretty evolved in their cultures to begin with. I think the reality is everyone's trying to survive, and decisions are made as they're made in times of crisis. Some good, some not so much. the key is, regardless of those decisions, figuring out where you're at today and seeing where you want to go in the future, and then engaging your leaders and employees in that path forward, regardless of what you've done in the past. I think employees course correct.
It's forced organizations to really consider what they want to be in the next couple of years.
Yes.
It stopped them coasting. It stopped them maybe making some wrong decisions. And it's enabled them to go, you know what, this is where we want to stand. This is how we want to be there, which is a benefit of this weird situation that the world was thrown into.
Agreed.
Completely out of everyone's control. I'm curious to know though, because you mentioned that, you know, your business is still in the pre-launch phase, I guess we could say, but obviously you're still getting calls, which is fun. Like, that must feel amazing for you to be able to just get calls and be like, I haven't even done anything yet. But you also said that already you're thinking of, you know, already you've implemented some changes of what you're going to be offering and how you're going to run your business. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about how you're going to change your act moving forward and sort of post worldwide pandemic and all the other stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, the fundamentals of my message, what's in my book is the same, but it's the crafting of the approach. So coming from crisis, having had to do that most of my career, you approach things different than you would, as outlined in my book, through normal circumstances. So for employee engagement, as an example, everyone does a survey and focus groups about the survey, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that is, you know, kind of the standard practice. About it. Yeah. And so folks call me up now and they're like, hey, we got to get a pulse on what's going on with our employees. You know, do we work with our standard, you know, survey partner to do that? And I'm like, no, this is not the time for a survey. This is the time for senior leaders to get out and speak with employees on the front lines on their turf in a safe way for both the senior leader and the employee. And that's really tricky right now here in the US for a variety of different reasons. Regardless of how tricky it is, it still needs to happen. And senior leaders need to hear the conversations. They can work with a trusted partner like myself to facilitate and coordinate that. And you have to hear it. And through hearing those stories, you will see where your priorities need to go. That will map your way forward. And employees will want to work with you to do that. They will feel happy that you asked, regardless of how unhappy they are in that moment. And so there is no plan and no strategy as there was pre-COVID. So my book kind of goes through what you should do. And I'm like, yeah, the structure of it.
Yeah, the framework still applies.
Yeah. And the typical tools you would have used, not so much. So I'm really, you know, working with organizations on that because no one's done this before. And so when you haven't done this before, you're coming out of crisis. For me, what's always been successful, as uncomfortable as it can be, is being in this, you know, in the space of your employees. For those that are really concerned about market share and their customers, or there's been some anger perhaps by your customer base or employee base, it's having those conversations with them as well. And there's structure you can put around that to ensure everyone feels safe, employees feel safe to be heard without any fear of consequence. Senior leaders feel safe to listen, even though they've made mistakes, all for the goal of moving forward and co-creating that future together. And that future only may be like, you know, a few months. It's not your typical 3 to 5 year strategic plan of the past. I think that is on pause for the moment. And then secondly, the other area that was pointed out to me indirectly by a really famous senior leader on the West Coast. She worked in Silicon Valley and an angel investor. And I had just a great phone call with her. And as I was speaking with her, I said, gosh, I think it would be difficult to be your vice president of people, your VP of HR. Said I could do it, but I have a different approach to that role. And I had 15 years of HR experience. But I said it would take a real strong leader to understand how to work with you. And you're wonderful and you understand the people portfolio. And you need to really have that confidence to be at the senior leadership table. And most HR roles at a senior level do not. And she goes, oh my goodness, I just hired a very famous company's HR person, and she is just that person. And I said, gosh, I really need to support senior HR leaders to work with their CEOs now more than ever, because the people portfolio is in need of some help. So I've kind of been called to help provide some support in that space too. And I would never have guessed that pre-COVID. So that's
it. It's forcing pivoting. I think pivot is like the word of the year. at the moment. Everyone's pivoting, but I think that's a good thing. You're having those conversations that, like you said, you would never have had. And to be honest, I think that will probably mold your business when you officially launch into something that you probably love a lot more and you're a lot more connected to than if you did it 3 months ago, 4 months ago, and did it off the bat of not assuming, but thinking this is what you wanted to do. Whereas now you've had that experience and it's molded this new path for you, which is super exciting.
It is. I am far more energetic about my offerings and my support than I was back in March. The space that I've moved into, it's what I loved about my job for 15 years at a variety of different organizations. And I'm happy. To me, the more dysfunctional the culture, the more I can help and the more happy I am.
The more you like it.
Support. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. You're like one of those those hoarder shows when they bring in that person that loves to clean.
Yeah.
That person.
Cleaning of cultures. I hadn't really thought of that.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna reflect on that. That's a good tagline.
One of my final questions to you is, if you had a senior leader in front of you right now that wasn't going through the best time, was struggling a little bit, was fantastic at their job, but they were just struggling a little bit, what would be some of the key fundamentals that you would walk through with them first and foremost to maybe help them it's almost like just help them breathe again?
Yeah, I'd first start with kind of the basics around where they're at with their health, their sleep, their diet, fitness, meditation, and kind of go through those basic logistics. Because if they're not, my guess is they haven't paid attention to it in the last 100 days. A lot of folks haven't. And so for them to really be at peak performance going forward, which is what is needed, they have to focus on those fundamentals. So I'd quickly kind of run through where they're at with those important elements and look at some directional improvement for them in that space. And then I would ask them to, what they're looking for in terms of desired outcome, what they feel their biggest challenges are. And then I would talk to them about what their thoughts are in terms of employee perspective. And when's the last time they've really checked in with their employees at the front line, and what would that leader think that they would be saying, thinking, or feeling? And we would work on developing a process to have some conversations that that leader feels safe with, and that the employees feel safe with, all for the end goal to dispel with what I call management mythology, which is the sanitized reports usually produced with good intention by managers that aren't ever fact-checked against the front lines. So we would develop that process to kind of break through any myths that may have been living in the organization and get the facts and start to re-engage with those employees. And in my book, I share many stories how I walked in the shoes of my front lines employees. So I would either clean toilets with housekeepers, deliver food trays, what have you. I have done it. And there hasn't been a shift or time that I had spent with employees, regardless of how upset they may have been in regards to organizational change, where I didn't leave that discussion or that shift that I worked feeling blessed to be in the opportunity to serve. So my joy as a leader always was heightened, regardless of how low I may have been feeling prior to that experience as a result of those interactions. So if a leader's feeling a little lack of purpose or feeling demotivated to really lead, understandably so after 100+ days in this new set of circumstances we're in, I find that spending some time with those employees who are serving their customers always reframes their perspective.
No, that's hats off to you for doing that as well. There's not many leaders and senior leaders, which is maybe part of the problem, that would sort of get down and dirty, so to speak, to really, like you said, walk in their shoes. And I think people have good intentions to do that. But very few people actually do it.
I agree. I say in my book, there's been times where it's important of that role and that work as it is to do it, I let the busyness of being a leader get in my way. And then I always realized, usually after it was a bit too late, where I was just feeling depleted and just kind of exhausted in the role, I'm like, I hadn't been, in the shoes of one of my employees for a few months. And I would course correct, work a shift, find the space and the time, and always would feel different coming through that experience and motivated again. So it's easy to do. I've lost my way many a time, and this is the world of leadership. And, it's just about course correcting and self-reflecting and not being too hard on yourself and just keep moving forward.
And a huge sense of, I mean, that is clearly a huge sense of awareness from your part as well, knowing when you're feeling like that, knowing what to do, knowing what to adjust, knowing the fact that actually you need to go and walk in their shoes, so to speak, which, you know, again, which is why you're being called right now. So really hats off to you and what you've done in your previous experience to build what you're building now. I have no doubt it's going to be a huge success.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm just here to help leaders now more than ever need support and a partner that they can trust to work with. So I'm happy to serve them as needed.
Fantastic. So my final question, how do people get in touch with you then? What's the best way for them to find more about you? You know, obviously they should be buying your book on Amazon.
Sure. Yes. In addition to that, they can find me at www.shonaelliott.org. And that's SHONAELLIOTT.org. And all my contact information is there, all my social media profiles. So I respond personally to any LinkedIn messages, emails, texts. I have my phone number available as well. So people can reach out, they can call, and I'm happy to add my 2 cents where needed.
Lovely. Shona, thank you so much for coming on. You've really, really demonstrated your expertise, but also just given me a hell of a lot to look into and some insight for people to take away.
Wow. Thanks for this gift, Steven. Just the opportunity to talk to you has been a blessing for me, and you're doing incredible work. And I'm sure you'll have so many reflections after this year is done.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Like we said before, the Founders 365 book. It's going to be a good one.
I'll be one of the first to buy.
Oh, so kind, so kind. Shona, thank you so much for being on Founders 365. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. This has been Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty.
Thank you.